Hi everybody, thanks for joining me again today. I'm going to be showing you step by step how to paint this fun little Hobbit house in the Shire. So if you guys are ready to learn how to paint this step by step using acrylic paint, let's get started. So for this painting today, I chose a 12 by 18 canvas. It's been primed already, but I always use a little bit of gesso to prime my canvases with, just one coat, a thin coat of white acrylic gesso, and I let it dry before beginning. I'm using a large Filbert brush, phthalo blue, and titanium white. I'm just going to go across and create sort of an arch there. That's just going to be for the roof, just the roof line there. And then I'm just going to come in and fill the sky in with a little bit of my phthalo blue and white. I'm definitely going to be using more blue than white. This is dusk. The painting is set in dusk, so we want it to have that nighttime kind of a feel to it. So we're just going to make it a little bit darker, and the paint will dry a little bit darker as well. So you just kind of want to add a little bit of white here and there, and then you can kind of change up the sky a little bit as well, making it look like maybe there's some lighter areas or darker areas, possibly some clouds kind of back there, but we don't need to focus too much on a lot of detail in the sky. The main focus and attention is going to be on the beautiful scene that we're going to create right now. Using the same brush, a little bit of that blue, white again, I'm just going to start kind of scumbling around, making some wiggly lines down here, working on the composition. So this is going to be sort of a stone path down here, leading up to some stone stairs that come from the door, the main entryway, and then leading up all the way far across on the right side, up and over a little hill. I'm just going to take this down a little bit lower here on the left side. Okay, so now I've got an oval mop brush, and you can use any brush you want for creating foliage. This is my latest favorite one, and I'm taking only my phthalo blue. I want this to be really dark and in silhouette, so I'm just going to simply tap along the top and off to the far right side for some foliage and branches. Later on, I'll be coming in with some black and a few other brushes to change up the look of the foliage a little bit. I'm going to continue down here on the bottom left using the same brush, and I'm just going to kind of work the paint, scumbling it, dry brushing it out, and this is going to be the very first base layer of our foliage in the foreground. Okay, I'm switching over to a smaller Filbert brush now. I'm going to mix up a little bit of my white that's got a little bit of that blue in there, and some orange. Now I'm using neon orange today, but you can use whatever orange that you want. And I'm using the Filbert brush because it's got that rounded end, so it's going to make it a lot easier for me to create the round windows and doors. So I'm starting on the far left, just a small one there, filling it mostly in with the orange. And then I'm going to come in with the main circle here. This is the door, so this one's going to be the biggest and the most circular. The other ones are kind of look like circles at first when I paint them, but then we're going to cover a lot of it with foliage, so don't worry about making your circles perfect, guys. Just really eyeball it and wing it. So I'm going to start the next. It's just an arch right here, and then I'm going to push and kind of turn around with my brush, and then I'm going to paint like a circle inside of a circle. So we have all these really neat ornate kind of looking frames around the door and the windows. So we'll continue along slightly, making it lower and kind of going along with that, following along that slope of the roof line. So now you can see my color has changed to brown. That's because I took a little bit of phthalo blue, a bit of water, along with the orange in my brush. So you can just make a nice earth tone, deep brown by mixing blue and orange together. I'm going to scumble a little bit of that color lightly over the blue steps that I made and the little stones down here. I'm going to go right over the top here and start working on the shadow on this side and the layer of foliage. So I just want to have a darker base to work with. So I'm going slightly over that orange window. I'm going to add just another little arch right in here and then scumble out the rest of my paint. Of course, I picked up more of my phthalo blue. I'm now going to come in on the top above the door. This is going to be the darkest part. We're going to be coming in with some black later on, but I just want to create the first base and get all my lines and my shapes down first before I come in with all my colors. So I'm just going to bring this arch up and then down the sides very thin. We're going to just have like a thin little line in between here. And again, keep in mind, we're going to be covering up a lot of this with foliage. But this spot right here above the door, that's going to be really black, dark later on. We're not going to be covering that up with foliage, so I want to make that look nice and clear. So I'll do another one above this window here. And then I'm going to fill in that gap in between and slightly above. Okay, I'm going to just continue to add a little bit more blue now. You can see the blues changing. I've worked out most of that orange out of my brush, so it's just looking like straight phthalo blue. And then I'm going to come in, go around, just defining the door now, and there's going to be quite a shadow and contrast right in this area here, but we'll build it up a little bit more as the painting progresses. I'm going to do a light, thin layer of this, few lines, just kind of sliding my brush side to side, up and down to create some lines for the little wood door. And then I'll just be softening with a little bit of water in my brush, keeping that paint transparent. We're going to be doing a filter over with a few different greens. And then just make a few little designs, ornate looking designs here, making it look like there's a bit of stonework perhaps. So just a few little lines that go around the arch, and then a thin outline underneath. And just a light indication of the design, the frame on the windows. We'll do the same thing over on this one. So once I finish this, I'm going to wash my brush out, and I'm going to take some sap green and mix it up with a little bit of my phthalo blue. And if it's just a dark green you want to use, it doesn't really matter what shade you're using, but if you guys are wondering, mine is actually mine's called hooker's green, but it's very similar to sap green. So I'm just going to do a few thick lines here to start my little stone steps, and you can see how every time I add one, it's pulling over more towards the center. And then I'm actually going to change it up a little bit as this painting progresses, and you'll see what I do. I want it to look like it's kind of veering off a little bit and turning. So I'll show you how I did that. And I'm going to come in along the side now and start building up the foliage. So I'm still just using my little Filbert brush, but I will be switching over to another brush when I work on the roof. I'm going to come in now and add a little bit of phthalo blue to the green that's left over in my brush, a little bit of white, and start working more on the color and the shape of the door. Right, I'm going to wash this brush out and switch over to my oval mop brush, taking my sap green and my phthalo blue now. I'm going to tap them together, get them nice and blended, and then I'm going to start pushing and tapping lightly to create the roof line and this moss covered roof that I love so much. And we're just going to follow along with the shapes of the windows and the doors. Anywhere you have a window or door, you're going to go up and copy that. So you just want to exaggerate. So your roof line is going to look sort of like it's scalloped. And we're just going to keep doing this, building it up one layer at a time. We'll be adding some highlights here, a little bit of my neon yellow, a little bit of white, and that green blue mixture. And you'll see here, I'm just gonna not push too hard at all. For the highlights, you don't want to push very hard. I'm just gonna start tapping where it gets a little bit lighter here as it gets kind of farther away with that little staircase leading off. And then I'm going to lightly come in and just start building up the first layers here of the foliage. Again, not pushing very hard at all. You just want to apply the least amount of pressure here. By doing so, you'll get that nice shape that the oval mop can give for foliage. So it's really important to not push too hard and not make anything look too solid. Where you want to have, because there's so many different bushes and plants that I'm adding to this painting, so I don't want it to all look like one big flat blob, right? So you want to have some areas that are going to be a different shade of green, dark and light, lots of highlights and shadow. And throughout this video, you guys are going to see a few different techniques that I use and change it up so you guys can really learn the most out of just one video like this for learning how to paint foliage. There's a few different ways. So there's the basic way of starting from dark and then going up to light. But as you can see down here on the bottom, I did start with a little bit of light below the windows, and then later on I'm going to come in with my dark. So it can be done and achieved both ways. And sometimes I just like to change it up just because I've been painting for so long and it can get a little bit monotonous. And so I like to change up my techniques sometimes just to keep my mind fresh, and so that I'm kind of not getting stuck in a rut and I'm always doing something new. And I'm just going to keep coming in here, building up my greens and my shadows. You notice how I added a little bit of foliage and vine looking stairs. So just adding a little bit of that green to the stairs, tapping will create that kind of a look like there's vines and flowers and stuff growing out into the stone steps. Coming in now with some black, a little bit of phthalo and green, or just black only. Just going to come right under the roof line for my darkest shadows, and then I'm going to add a little bit here and there to the foreground for some more shadow base and some contrast. And just sliding my brush around, wiggling. You can use a little flat brush like this or a little Filbert brush. Just working out the rest of my paint down there on the bottom. Now coming in here, I'm just going to adjust a little bit of the shapes here under my roof line and where I want to have a darker shadow. So I'm going to come in and just wiggle out a little bit more of the green, blue, and black, pushing and kind of wiggling around. This is going to be another dark, deep base for the next layer. I'm going to build up to some highlights there and using a few different greens today. I'm even going to be using a little bit of turquoise too. So now you can see I'm going to define the shadow areas more and just going around the inside lightly, thinner on the right and thicker with my shadow on the left. And then I'll do that little thin line straight up and down on either side of the door. I'm going to add the suggestion of a little bit of a shadow on the top of the door and right on the bottom of the door as well. Now I'm picking up some of my neon yellow. I love the way it blends a little bit with the black there, creating a beautiful deep natural green. So I'm going to slightly wiggle that out over part of the lighter green that I have. Just working on these lines a little bit more. And there's just going to be a little doorknob right there. We'll do more to that later on. Again, sliding my brush up and down, working some more on the little lines in the wood for my door. And you definitely don't have to worry about making them all even. This is just make-believe, fantasy, whimsical. It doesn't have to be perfect. Again, going to scumble out the leftover paint in my brush. This will create that depth that we want for our foliage. Now just taking a little bit of white tinted with my orange, I'm I'm going to do a light, very, very light outline and indication of some roof lines here. I'm going to brighten this up with a little bit of my neon yellow and white. And pull and sweep around the bottom, the base of the door, and that front step. I've got my even tail wisp fan brush now, some water, white, and turquoise, and I'll just see that pattern. It's so fun. I love this brush. I'm going to be using this right now to kind of wiggle and pull down for that pattern in the wood for the door, just a little bit. And then I'm going to be using it in the foreground here too, so you guys can see a few different ways of how you can use this really fun brush. Later on, I'll be creating some flowers with it, like stocky looking flowers like hollyhocks or delphiniums, lupins. So it's a really, really neat brush for doing all sorts of things in a landscape painting. And I have a Filbert brush like this too that I use sometimes in my paintings and my videos that I've shown you guys. And I just got these brushes at Michael's. They're Zen. The brand name is Zen. So I've got a liner brush now. This is sort of a long liner brush. You can use any liner brush you want though. I've taken water and a little bit of black paint. You need the water to help the paint flow out of a liner brush. It's really, really imperative. Otherwise, you're going to be super frustrated, especially when and if you're painting branches like this. So I'm going to just keep pulling and wiggling to create some thicker looking branches and then smaller, wispier looking branches. I'm going to come over top of most of these with some more foliage. And I'm going to be using a few different brushes. The first brush I'll be using is the fan brush, and I'm not too crazy about it, so I'm going to show you guys here. I've got a little fan brush and tapping it into my black, and then I'm going to come along here and start tapping, but you can see like all those little spaces between. It's just really not working out how I want it to. It doesn't look like the type of foliage and branches that I want and that I'm going for, so I'm going to just get rid of this brush here and go over to my oval mop. I'm going to just push off some of this excess paint here that didn't look quite right, and then just kind of tap all over to make this look a lot more natural. So my brush is a little bit wet. It's not dripping, but it's just a little bit wet here from when I washed it off earlier, and that's kind of creating that neat transparent shadowy look effect that we've got going on. I'm going to scumble out the rest of the paint over top of part of this yellow-green mixture that I have down here, and a little bit down here at the base of the stairs. And I'm going to come over with some more of my yellow, a little bit more black, yellow, sap green. I want it to look like there's moss and plants growing all over the stairs. So you see how I've started to turn my lines for my stairs, just kind of give them that direction and that flow that they're kind of, it makes you feel like they're turning off towards the right. I'm going to tap a little bit more in here of my dark green with a little bit of black mixture. And I also want to go up the side of the stairs here as well and make this a little bit darker for our next layer of foliage and highlights. With a clean brush, I've got a flat brush, I'm taking my neon orange and some white, and I'm going to reapply this over the windows, inside the windows and above, and just above the door a little bit too. So the idea is to make it look like there's a nice, warm, inviting glow and light coming in or coming outside from the windows or casting down on the stone staircase and some of the foliage and some of the flowers. We'll be adding some really fun colors today. Some of my neons that I like to use, like my luminous rose, and I've got neon pink that I'm going to be using, as well as another neon yellow, but it'll be a warm neon yellow. So I was trying to see and play around with a staircase here, kind of going up towards this window. But I decided a little bit later on that it was competing too much with the main staircase going up to the door, the entryway. So I've got 3 staircases right now. I'm going to lose this one here pretty soon, and I'll show you if you have this problem in a painting and you don't know what to do. You can easily kind of just camouflage that and come over top with some bushes or trees or flowers. So I'll show you that as the painting and video progresses. But right now I'm just going to take a little bit more of my neon yellow and white, and I'm just going to lightly pull and drag across the top of each of the stairs. As I'm doing this, I'm picking up a little bit of wet black and green paint. I'm going to just add a little bit more to the stairs. I'm going to tap kind of and wiggle to create more of that stone look and some vines coming down and moss, and just add a little bit more shadow here and there before we start our next step. All right, so I'm going to finish this up quickly, wash my brush out, make sure I have all of that green and black mixture out. And then I'm going to come in with my neon orange, and it's just straight neon orange now. So that's why when I'm overlapping it here on the green and the other colors underneath and around, it looks like it's brown. I am just using the neon orange, and then I'm going to come in with a little bit of white, a little bit of neon yellow mixture that will filter over and turn a soft, bright, warm kind of a green color. So this is the funnest part about painting for me. I love to see what colors I can come up with by overlapping. And when you filter over, you have to make sure that your paint is dry before doing so. Otherwise, it's not going to work, and what you're going to be left with is muddy tones. You're not going to have the colors that you want. So that is the trick and tip I'm giving you guys. I've had a few people ask me this lately. How do I not get my colors when I'm using so many colors and layering so much? How come it's not getting muddy? It's because the paint is drying in between. So with how I'm hopping around from one area to another, that's giving those other layers time to dry. So it's kind of fun to kind of just, let it rest and go on to another part of your painting, or you can dry things off really quickly by just having a hair dryer close by. So I've got my oval mop again. I love this brush so much. I got a few of these over the weekend at Michael's, and I'm taking my yellow and my white, and I'm coming in with some puffy, fun looking little bushes and plants here that later on we're going to be adding some flowers to. So we'll go along the side of the stairs, in between the windows, underneath the windows, and I'm going to be adding a little bit more highlight on the roof as well. So I'll show you right now. I'm just going to tap lightly, and it's definitely okay if you accidentally go over part of the black. We can cover that up, or we can leave it because, this is all foliage and grass and moss, so it could definitely be hanging over part of the roof line. So now, just to give it a bit more of a softer look, I'm using my large Filbert brush. And this is either a number 11 or number 12. I think it's a number 12 actually. And this brush is excellent. This brand is Pro Stroke Power Acrylic. Really, really nice brand of brushes. I'm not sure. I think it might be synthetic hairs or the bristles. Okay, so I'm going to start coming in with some dark base here, my black with a little bit of my green or my blue, any dark base here in between the windows, and then over top here with a little bit more of my yellow and white. While it's still wet, that's how I'm able to get all those midtones in there. You get so many different shades all at once of greens, and it's a really nice, natural, organic way to paint when you work wet on wet. So I'll continue along here tapping, making this a little bit thicker in between the windows and making it look like that foliage is coming over in front of the very last window there that just sets that back in. It makes it look a little bit more nestled in there, as well as this whole Hobbit house, all this foliage and grass and moss and flowers that we have around it and growing up over it really gives it that cozy nestled look. Now you can see that I'm coming over down here at the base a little bit more, tapping in just to maybe soften up some of these bushes a little bit. I even went over a little bit on the black silhouette tree above the house too, just to give a little green hint, just a little suggestion, but we really don't want to paint that all green. We want to keep that in silhouette. So we'll keep going here until we're ready for the next step. And I've got my neon yellow that I've taken with a little bit of my sap green, and I'm just going to filter over here over top of that blue, which looks really pretty. I love that layered look. And I'm going to leave one part of the door kind of in the middle to the left side highlighted. So I'm going to make that a little bit lighter and brighter and darker all around it. That just kind of makes it look like the lights, maybe the moonlight shining on it or whatever light is around. And then I'm going to come in to redefine this black area under the roof line and above the windows and the door a little bit more. I'm going to add a little outline for the windows. This way we can see the windows are separate from the rest of the house. And see how my brush is kind of splitting apart? I don't mind because in the reference photo that I'm kind of looking at, or the reference photos, I should say, I kind of did my own thing with looking at a few different pictures. There's lots of different frames around the windows and the door, so there's lots of circles. So it's okay when your brush splits apart like that and you create kind of 2 or 3 rings or circles all at once. It's actually helpful. Then you're getting it done a lot quicker and all at once. So I'm coming in with a little bit more black here, building up the foliage some more and redefining the shadow areas. I'm going to add a little bit more black right over here. I'm slightly going over part of the orange, making it a little bit smaller. And then I'm going to bring that up a little bit. Okay, see how I made it line up with the door, thinner there, so I'm letting off and just using the tip of my brush where I want it to be a skinnier line. When I pull and drag over towards the left, I'm pushing just slightly harder to make it wider. So that makes our door look 3D. I'm going to continue down here with a little bit more shadow, just barely touching, light little wiggles with the tip of my brush. Just working out a little bit of that light green in there too, combined with the leftover black in my paint. Now here I grabbed a little bit more of my black paint, added more of a shadow down below, washing that brush off, switching over to a smaller one. You can use a filbert or a flat one or a round one for this. I just took my neon orange, neon yellow, blended them together with a little bit of white, and this is that beautiful golden warm light layer that I've added over the windows, above the door frame, the base of the door, and a little suggestion down the staircase. So wherever I want to have that nice inviting golden light, I'll add a little bit here and there. Now the little post, the beam above the door there, I'm going to add this color too and kind of just add this little roof line up here again and a few little dabs for some beams. So it really doesn't take a lot to create a cool looking Hobbit house. You guys can see just a few little lines here and there and some cool brushes to build up the light and the shadow. So I'm going to start coming in with the first layer of flowers down there, and that's going to be with my oranges and yellows and a bit of white. And now with some turquoise, so I'm going to make sure my brush is clean first, and then I'm going in for my turquoise and I'm sliding my brush up and down to add a little hint of that color there on the door. I'm going to continue down here by tapping lots of little dots and dabs of my turquoise, and over here as well. Now this just makes these certain flowers or leaves, whatever they are, look a little bit different sizes, more random. But if you're looking for more of a manicured look, perfect look, and a little bit more even, then you can use your mop brush. That'll give you more of that even, controlled look. But I kind of like my gardens looking a little bit messy. I like a little bit of everything, I guess. So some of my bushes and flowers will be a little bit more ornate looking and neat and tidy. With my Filbert brush, clean Filbert brush, and light ultramarine blue or light blue violet, I'm going to add a little bit of this over the sky now. And this is what really, really, really brings this whole painting and all these colors together. It wasn't until I actually was not going to continue with this painting. I wasn't happy with it at all, and that usually doesn't happen to me. I'm usually really happy while I'm painting, positive, and in good spirits. But for some reason, when I was working on this, I was kind of discouraged. But I kept going, and once I started to add this color, I got excited. So I know that it's really complementary to all the greens in this painting. It's also complementary to the peach and the warm glows that we have from the window and that light. So it's a really nice addition to almost any painting. I find that this color always works in my paintings. I don't know, maybe it's because I use a lot of green in my paintings and peachy tones. But so I'm going to go along, add a little bit of it to the windows, the stairs, use it for flowers. It just looks really, really pretty. So I'm going to go a little crazy with it and maybe add more than you guys want to, but it's just making me happy right now and making me want to continue working on this painting. So I'm going to add a little bit, trailing all the way off to the far right, up that staircase. And then at the base of the stairs and around the window frame, I just kind of pull and swirl in there a little bit of maybe like a little railing or a little rock wall. So just continuing along here, having fun with my light ultramarine blue, I'm going to add some gentle looking little bushes there at the left side of the base of the door. And I'm going to kind of just follow around, adding a little bit more here and there. I'm going to even add some to the roof line and those little beams. And then right around these tiny little tucked away windows. And then we'll come in with some more foliage and more shadow, green, black kind of based tones, and get rid of that staircase in the middle. I want to be left with 2 staircases only, and that middle one there is just stealing all the attention from the front, I think anyways. But I'm curious to know what you guys think. Leave a comment below if you think that I should leave that or should have left that middle staircase. I don't think it goes there because I think this is all one house, and I kind of veered off track with this painting when I added that staircase there. So let me know what you guys think, but I'm going to get rid of it anyways. You guys can leave it if you want. Oh, and I also want to encourage you guys to join the Facebook group. I've got a private Facebook group just for you subscribers that want to share your versions from my tutorials. And I can't wait to see your versions of this house. It's going to be so much fun to see everybody's versions. I know a lot of you guys are big fans. A lot of people are big fans of Lord of the Rings and these cute little Hobbit houses in the Shire. So I know there's going to be a lot of you guys painting this one, and be sure to join. I'll leave a link below the video, of course, in the description box, as well as all the colors and brushes I'm using today in the canvas. So here you can see I'm coming in with my next layer, coming over top part of what we've done underneath, leaving little bits showing through of all those lighter colors and tones. I'm going to build up a little bit more dark shadow on the far left side and just a little bit here all over, or in between the windows and down below, and a bit that kind of grows up and over the roof. So it's kind of just taking over this whole house, but it works so well. And like I said earlier, it just makes it look so cozy and nestled in there. Now, right away, not even washing my brush, I'm coming in with turquoise, neon yellow, and white, but you can use any light color you want to create your highlights for your little bushes here. So I'm just going to come over and soften my shadows. There, you've got that nice dark base. It's really important to have that nice deep dark base in order for your foliage to look 3D. So that's what I've done there. And I'm going to come in with a liner brush now. I'm mixing my orange with my phthalo blue to make that deep brown color, and a little bit of water. So I'm just going to create a little bit more architecture kind of character and whimsiness around the windows. I'm going to work on the inside of the windows, kind of decide what design I want. I'm not looking at the reference photo anymore at this point. I just kind of want to do my own thing. To be honest, I looked at the reference photo maybe 10% for 10% of this whole painting. I have a really hard time following reference photos. I just really want to do my own thing more and more these days, but it really did get me inspired. So it's nice to have reference photos for inspiration. And if you're stuck on a certain area, of course, it's important. Now here, I'm showing you guys, I didn't like that design, so I wiped it off. I'm going to come over with a fresh coat of paint. I'm going to go over all the windows so they all kind of match, and add a little bit more there above the door. And then I'm going to add some white to that. I'll add a little bit more here to this little beam or notch of wood and make that a little bit larger. I'm going to just kind of scumble over some of those lines. They look a little bit too dark, so I want to brighten that up just a little bit more. And now hopefully this is the last time I cover up this window, but you can see how forgiving acrylic paint is. You can easily wipe it off or just paint over it, and that's what I really love about acrylic paint. It's so versatile, I guess the word is, and it works well for artists like me that kind of can't make their mind up if they want something and need to correct something right away, whereas oil can be a little bit less forgiving. And I'm going to come in now with my final coat of shadow, and then I'm going to begin my flowers pretty soon. So I'm using another mop stippling brush here, and I'm only using this one because all my other ones are wet and they kind of lose that shape after they get wet. So I make sure that I always have 5 to 7 mop brushes on hand, so I can always have a fresh one that's got that nice shape to it. And that's just kind of a little side note tip for you guys. When buying brushes, try to, of course, wait till they're on sale. And I just got a few different brushes for a really great price at Michael's. They had a buy one get one 50% off, so I picked up a few of my Princeton oval brushes. But yeah, it's definitely a really good idea to get a few of the same brushes and get different sizes as well. So now building up my highlights some more, neon yellow, a little bit of white, as you guys could see me loading my brush there. And we're going to be using some really fun colors here pretty soon, so stay tuned for the next step, guys. Okay, so before I add my color, I'm going to do a light white base here. So without washing this brush off, because I don't want to lose the shape of it, I just want to tap it into my white and add it anywhere that I want to have my brightest highlights in this painting. So I'm doing that first with a little bit of white, and then I'm going to leave a few spaces and concentrate on just kind of one little section here and there, so it's not just all one big blob of the same color. Make sure you guys are leaving a few little spaces in between, and that'll make your foliage and landscapes really stand out. We need to have those shadow areas in there so things look layered and more 3D. So I've got another mop brush now. This one's all dry and clean. I'm going to tap into my titanium white and then tap lightly into my neon pink. I'm going to just tap really gently, very barely touching the canvas, really lightly here, overlapping on some of the other colors to create other ones, and just kind of just bring everything all together so things kind of gradually blend into one another. And of course the pink overlaps really nicely with that light blue violet, and it's also really complementary with all the greens. So that's why I'm choosing my pink and my luminous rose today. Now here's my Zen Eventail fan brush that I'm tapping in to create those old English stocky looking flowers. So delphiniums and hollyhocks, lupin. I love that old English looking cottagey garden flower look. I love that. Someday I would love to own a little cottage somewhere in England, or even have a little hobbit house. I think there's actually a place in New Zealand, and they have a real hobbit house village there. I had never known that before, and I wouldn't have known that unless I was kind of just Googling and looking at different images today, looking at hobbit houses in the Shire, and that came up, and I thought, oh my gosh, that's on my bucket list now. I've got to go to New Zealand and see this place. But I've been using a little bit of neon luminous rose and still using this cool little Zen brush, and just kind of doing this really impressionistically, pulling and dragging, tapping wherever I want to have some little blobs of color that are supposed to be flowers and floral types of bushes, accenting parts of the house, overlapping, just to create some more pretty colors that will just bring everything all together in this painting. I'll be coming in with a few different brushes now, a little Filbert, maybe a little flat brush, adding some more of my luminous rose. It's like a quinacridone violet or magenta. If you guys don't have this specific color, that'll look really, really nice. It'll look very similar to what I'm using right now. So I'm just gonna kind of go around and give that staircase a little bit more of a sweepy, curvy, flowy kind of a look. Come in, just adding the last little bit of details on this painting, more shadows, highlights, flowers. I'll be using my neon orange, my neon yellow, and adding some more warmth in my floral garden or my flower garden here in the foreground, and some more white, and just really brightening everything up. So I'm gonna wash my brush off and come in. I just took a little scoop of each neon orange and neon yellow warm, and I tapped it around in my garden, slightly overlapping part of the pink and the white to create some different tones there. And then a little bit here right below the window that I thought was a little bit too brownish kind of looking, so I'm going to work on that, adjust that a little bit, and then make sure, so right in here I'm just going to add a little bit of white to it to soften it. I don't want it to look brown, I want that to look like flowers. So then just work out the rest of that color and build up a little bit more saturation inside part of the windows. I'm going to add a little bit to the stairs as well. I kind of want to add all the colors that I've used in this painting in the staircases. I want the painting, like I said earlier, to really all come together and work well together, all the colors. So layering, highlighting, and shadow is key for making that happen. And of course, you don't want those muddy tones to happen. So when working with a lot of color, it's really important to make sure that you're adding those colors in the right order and on a dry surface. Unless you're wanting to create many different tones of one color, like with our roof and all the greenery on our roof, I was working wet on wet purposely so that I would get all those different tones. So I'm just going to add a little bit more of a shadow to the top of the door and around the bottom. To do this, I've got a very thin, watered down phthalo blue on my brush right now. So this will look like a natural shadow both on the top and the bottom of the door, making it look like the light is shining on the rest of the door. I'm going to add a little bit more foliage here, tapping and pushing to make it look like big chunky leaves, maybe like big ivy leaves or something. So I'm using my little Filbert brush to do that with my black and my phthalo blue and my green. Then for my highlights on my leaves, I'm coming in with my light green mixture, so neon yellow, a little bit of white. Back to my even tail fan brush. I'm going to tap a little bit in here and there for some different looking types of foliage. And then I actually thought that in between the door and the window, the leaves there were a little bit too thick for where they're situated. That would work better if it was more in the foreground. So I'm going to soften this up a little bit, and I'm just going to do that by taking my Filbert brush here, tapping lightly, and this will help blend it and also take off some of that paint. Because remember, we've got that dark layer underneath. So I'm just going to scumble this off, making it look a little bit narrower right here. And then I'll reapply my foliage to make it look a little bit deeper and darker before adding my final little bits of flowers and highlights here. I've got only white on my brush, and then I'm going to take a little bit of my light blue violet and just kind of detail a little bit more on the bottom of the stairs, a little bit of phthalo blue as well, just pulling and dragging to blend it into those stairs. And I'm just going to add the finishing details to this painting, clean up my little bushes here, making that staircase completely gone like it never existed. And yeah, I'm a lot happier now with just the main staircase and the one on the far right. So just using my neon yellow white mixture now for my brightest highlights. And then just a little bit more right on the roof, a little bit of black. Just clean this up before I call this painting done. And then a little bit of black left on my brush. I'm gonna just sparingly add, tapping lightly into the roof to create a little bit more of a deep dark textured shadow look. Okay, so as I add the finishing touches to this painting, I want to thank you guys so much for joining me today, for subscribing to my channel, supporting me on Patreon, Pinterest, Facebook, Instagram, here of course, and wherever else that you follow me. It means so much, and you guys are all keeping me going and doing what I love to do, and that is to inspire and teach you guys. Have a wonderful day, happy painting, and I'll see you all soon in another video. Bye for now.